Starting. Alright, so be quiet. Hello, hello, hello. I bet you didn't think you'd see this face opening the show, or that face. Well, no, I gotta point this way. That face opening the show. These two handsome devils. That's right. The Trenches is back live with an all-new episode. Of course, as you see, no, Anthony has not changed into a much handsomer individual. It is Jay Pettry, our editor, our do-it-all man. You may even very well call him the Trenches man in the chair. He really is the heart and soul, the backbone of our show. He is filling in for Anthony Walker this week, who is on assignment at UFC 241 in Anaheim, doing a lot of things, hopefully making very good content for Sherdog.com. I'm Jason Burgos. Of course, Jay, you have finally gotten... You know what, Anthony? You talk about changing hosts. I changed the host on you. New host now. Jay Petry's in. You're out. Jay, I'm happy to have you here.
How we doing, Mr. Burgos?
How we doing, Mr. Burgos?
There's been about 45 weeks of the status quo. It's time to march. No, I'm just kidding. Mr. Walker is working on 241 right this second. He's there right now, so he can't even be watching the show live. It's too bad for him. But I'm glad to be here. I've always been here, as we would say in The Shining. But it's good to be on the other side of the scheme and hopefully looking up some stuff and talk all kinds of shop with you. So it's gonna be fun.
All right, so we got a bunch of questions. We're excited to get into it. I'll jump right into it because of course Europe one, our go-to guy, the number one. He comes with the first question.
He's our hero.
Really, he's the reliable one. No disrespect to everybody else. You guys are fantastic, but you're one straight up MVP of these questions. Now his first question is, do some fighters perform worse as they get more technically sound? Which I remember reading this earlier. I was like, wait a minute, what's he trying to say? But let's continue. He wants to know if performers get worse when they get more technically sound. For example, he says, Liz Carmouche had more success fighting wildly against Ronda Rousey than she did trying to be composed and technical against Valentina Shevchenko. Jay, what are your thoughts? Is she getting worse by being more technically sound?
You know, I see what he's driving at. I think of some fighters that we've had along the way that are a little more reckless as they start. They're still figuring themselves out. They're still figuring out what they're good at, what they're able to manage, what they can defend well, like a Diego Sanchez type. You know, he was a brawler after he was a good wrestler. So he kind of changed his style, got wild to kind of get in and feel where he's more comfortable. Where Liz Carmouche, she was a little more, she kind of tried to impose a wrestling game against Ronda a little bit. You know, it was a relatively short fight. Somehow, I've watched that over many times to see how she got Ronda's back for a second and almost had her. But she was a little more, I don't know if she had a little more pep in her step. She was more aggressive. She was more reckless. I mean, this was her time to shine when she fought Ronda. And this was her time to shine against Shevchenko. Now, I mentioned this earlier this week on Off the Chain that Carmouche only tried 4 takedowns. Tried 4 takedowns. This is her world. This is what she's the best at. So she tried to stay at a long distance. If you remember, she wasn't just out of range of kicking or whatever. She was out of range of basically everything. And I don't know exactly, this is going to sound weird. I don't know what her game plan was because it wasn't what it could have been, what it should have been. I mean, she landed, and I also remember this stat too. She landed, Liz Carmouche, in the course of 25 minutes, landed 18 significant strikes. You just can't win a title like that if you're not dominating the other parts of your game. You know what I mean? Like if she were grappling and had the advantage and you got her down and working her over, trying for submissions, whatever, then you can get away with not striking as much. But if you're not striking, you're not grappling, you're not doing anything, what are you doing? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of her game plan? Do you think she tried to be technical? What do you think she was nervous? What do you think?
I went on almost a Twitter rant that night while watching this thing because I don't blame it on her technically sound or whatever. Kudos to her becoming a better fighter from what she was against Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
I really put it on the game, on the team. Her strategy from her coaches, her camp, because when you're watching the fight, there isn't any urgency early on, and by the third round I tweeted about this and actually got a retweet from Dean Thomas about it, was that there was no urgency. Like, her corner was making it seem like, oh, you're doing great, like as if she's winning. They were giving,
you might be down, but yeah, you're good. That's right. She was.
And
okay, keep doing what you're doing.
McFarland, who I've talked to a few times, I respect her mind. She was like, yeah, you're doing great. Everything's going good. I was like, what are you talking about, Lima? Like, you guys are losing 3 rounds to nothing, probably. Like, there needs to be urgency. Like, you need to go out and try to finish her society. So I really think, and then what Dean Thomas, the reason he retweeted was he was mentioning his belief that there should be, like, the scoring should be released to the corners in between rounds, because clearly they needed to know they're losing. So I really blame it on her corner and the strategy and the way they were going about things, that they must have thought that was the style they wanted to go with. They wanted to go with a heavy movement, but it's like I loved her footwork, but she could never find range. Like
it was, you're right. It was like the first half of something that could really work. You're right, though. The movement, because she was back side to side and working on her angles. Okay, that can confuse a kickboxer. But then what? Then where's the other half of it? You know, that's what was missing, I think. And you're right too about the corners wanting scores. Glory Kickboxing and some other kickboxing promotions and a bunch of others along the way have open scoring in many situations, where after every round the scores will be published, and you know, the judges scored 10-9, 10-9, 10-9, and they'll have it all listed so you can know. Would that have, do you think that would have helped? You think that would have changed her? She would have gone, oh snap, what am I doing? I'm down 4 rounds. And I think the fact that Shevchenko didn't commit either made it a really tough fight to watch. So, how are we doing, Mr. Burgos? I can't quite hear your microphone yet, pal. We got some dead air going on. I think we're experiencing some technical difficulties. I can hear Mr. Burgos, but I don't think he can hear me. And that's you know, well, it's the things we deal with when we're going live. Is sometimes we have these little things crop up, new technology, new issues, new problems, because you know, our audio is kind of tweaking out right now. But I don't know. What do you think? How we looking? How we hearing? I'm enjoying myself right now.
Hello.
This kind of stuff we deal with from the production aspect.
Hello.
Is that things go wrong and we have to figure out how to scramble and deal with this live.
Hello.
So, if you can hear, just to avoid, you know, this is just one of those things that happens because Google Hangouts kind of took off some of its features so that it wouldn't be easier to support our broadcasting on that. So we had to change it up. So this is some of those growing pains we're working along the way.
Hello.
I don't know if Jason is what he's doing right now, if he's able to get things going.
Hello. Can you hear me?
But we're working on it. I can assure you we are working on it. Now, I don't know if he can hear me now. That's okay. I'll move to the next type of question.
Hello.
Now, about this event, we had the co-main event that was pretty wide, you know, between Mike Perry and Vicente Luque, back and forth.
All right. And can you hear me now? All right, hold on now, because we're still live streaming. I'm going to have to show everybody how we do this whole live streaming thing, because I'm going to have to reload your video, because this is the brilliantness of having a laptop that works, but has a battery issue, which is fantastic.
Oh, man.
So as you
That's
see,
terrific.
Everybody's going to get like a little internet tutorial on how we do our little thing, and it's the bare bones, and it's not exciting, but You can hear me. I can hear you. I'm looking at the live stream. Everything is coming back, unfortunately. I'm sure if Anthony was here, he'd say trash several
Yeah. Oh,
times.
oh, absolutely. He would hold the trash can up. He
But
would. He would
there you go. I
bring
see
the
you
pain.
now on the live stream. So, all right. So where we left off at was you were talking about Liz Carmouche and the corners that I didn't get to answer about
Yep.
what the judging, the scoring was released. Would it have made a difference? I definitely think it
Hmm.
would have made a difference. Like
Yep.
I think we would have gotten some reactions where we saw
Hmm.
them like, oh, we're down. Oh, all right, Liz. It would have definitely changed things for sure. But I mean, did you want to add anything to it, or we could just move on to the next question? That's for sure.
Oh no, no. I'm just. I mean, I guess there's one more general question: is would open scoring really make that big of a difference? Do you think corners would adjust and change drastically if they thought if they straight up knew we're down? Because the arguments are it can be demoralizing. You're down. Oh, you're gonna back it up, or if you're up rounds and you're just gonna coast. Would that make a huge difference?
I mean, it's interesting because like, what do you do? Yeah, it's a good point. How do you score? How do you difference? And I guess that's the debate about it. Like, why some people are for it and why some people are
Hmm.
against it. I mean, I'm for it though. I think it behooves the fighters, but then yeah, you have to be scared about what you just said. If somebody knows they're winning, do they coast? How does it affect the fighting? But in the
Exactly.
end, if they kind of know what we kind of know at home, what's the difference? If I guess you don't want to see a fighter make a stupid decision. So if they're up, they start making decisions like they're trying to win and they're actually winning. I think you see fighters make smart decisions, and I think you may see the proverbial fighters with the throw everything at in the kitchen sink at somebody, and you see the desperation much more if a person knew, look, this is it, I'm losing, I'm down in the championship fight, I have to go for it all or I'm out of it. So I think it would at least up the desperation point of certain fights, especially big fights.
So you're saying we'd have more Sanchez, Melendez kind of fights then? Oh crap! I'm down on the scorecards. I might as well go nuts.
Yeah.
Hey, if that's what comes with it, I am down. But think about it. I mean, at the same time, we can also have crazy brawls like that co-main event. What happened there?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, and but yeah, I mean, but those aren't affected too much by it because at least hey, everybody's if 1-1. But I guess if how did you score that fight? Did you have Luque up 2-0 going to that third round?
I had Luque, Perry, Luque is how I had it scored. But that was the kind of fight. It was. I think I saw at the end of it. It was separated by what, 2, 3 significant strikes.
Mm-hmm.
It was, here the whole everyone just everything was power. Everything was nuts. It would have been. I Some people spouted robbery. Some people said, I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Perry should have won. I mean, the Perry faithful, of course, the Perry faithful will be faithful. That's fine. But it's not a robbery either way. There's close fights. You can have a close fight without having a
Yeah.
robbery, right? But I guess the good thing is, they got 50 grand, right?
Exactly. I mean, on that, let's move on to the next question from Nostradamus, which I mean, always a fascinating name. He asks, speaking of Mike Perry, perfect transition. Mike Perry just got a
Okay.
bonus of $50,000. How is he broke?
Good.
He
Oh,
lives in Florida, a cheap place to live compared to other states, says Nostradamus, which is unfortunately probably true. And how could he have $6? Jay, I mean, I have my thoughts on it. I tweeted about it earlier. What are your thoughts on him having only $6? Because let's add in that he said he had to pay the Uruguay government took a lot in taxes.
yep.
His team, I think he
Yep.
said took 17%. He had the back taxes. That's why he only has it. But Jay, your thoughts on this situation?
I mean, not even to decry fighter pay, because I'm sure we could talk for an hour about what we think it's worth. Um, I wouldn't go far as to say it's bad money management. That's a little stretch because I don't know the situation. But when you owe a considerable amount of back taxes, you have to wonder. But I think it said 58 grand for show money, which is that's not too bad. It's $50,000 bonus. It's Reebok money, so it's about a buck 17. I think is what he came away with. Um, Managers 10%, team 10%, give or take. Percentages can be 15, 20% is how you can throw at that. I have heard many a time that taxes in some South American countries can hit a fighter's purse pretty darn hard. But then you can also think to the situation that happened when the UFC moved their card from Vegas to California. And Walker was covering live and asked the question about how everybody's pay would be changed by a significant percent, and it's correct. There are different taxes depending on where you fight, but you have to. If you don't know as a fighter, which you not necessarily have to know, you need to have a team that can, right? If you're paying 10%, if you're paying 10% of your total earnings, which sometimes it's purse, sometimes it's earnings, depending on how they negotiate. If you're paying your management team 10% of your total earnings, they probably should have this stuff straightened out.
Yeah.
Now, you can't not. Like you could make jokes for days. Prairie, Florida man, he spends his money on silly tattoos, blah 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 blah. But he's gonna have somebody that's paying attention. What do you think? Do you think he has someone to pay attention? Do you think this makes sense?
And
does this make sense?
And that's a perfect transition to what I was going to say. And that's why you're the new co-host. Ant Walker's out. He's out, which I'd like to mention. Cole Shelton said Judas moved to kick Ant off the show. That's right. I'm taking after you, Cole. Stroll on, Judas. But you know what's funny is, is I had a really interesting conversation with a person in the industry who does managing, he does coaching, he does agent work and stuff like that. And we talked a lot about different things, and I brought up to him, like, we sort of have it in MMA, but we really need it in a higher level because we see it in other sports. There needs to be, and that's why I kind of, want to do a union, and I wish for unions, and I've talked to some people in the industry who don't think a union actually is possible, which is crazy to hear that from, people that are close to something like that. They don't think it will work, but there needs to be like an athlete symposium, or like, I know they have the retreats, but from what I've been told, the UFC retreat...
Those are PR.
Yeah, like even the one championship retreat, it's probably, to make one look good. I don't know, or the UFC or one, how much they're really looking out for. That's why there needs to be like a union. They need to bring these guys in because they have such limited funds. They really need to teach them money management. And that's not to say everything you said is totally true, because you have these people that are taking large sums and they should take better care of them, but maybe they just need that extra something. They need, to come in and sit down with their peers and talk to experts and people that can give advice, because they need to know how to money manage, because I tweeted about it. We just had Jessica Andrade last year talk about how she had to sell her fighter kits to make some extra money.
Oh man, yeah, that's terrible.
So this is a legitimate problem, and they're not making money. This isn't millionaires where you're like, oh, they blew $1 million, they're idiots. No, these are guys that are 100,000.
Right, they're crying on their $20 bills. Yeah,
like these are guys that making like regular people kind of money, and they need to be smart with it. Who is it? Jason Knight. I interviewed him before his first bare knuckle FC fight, and he talked to me and other people about how he messed up his money with the UFC. He was winning. He thought he was going to have a winning life and spent like a winner. Then he started losing, and the money wasn't the same.
Man.
So there needs to be something out there to look after these fighters and sit them down. Like, this is what you need to do with your money, and then have those fighters come in like, look, I was a great champion in the UFC, and I have nothing. I had to go get a regular job. Those things that'll get a message like...
that happens.
They have to... They need something like that really bad. Really bad.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that happens, the fact that there are former champions and people like that who are having to sell their gear just to make a couple bucks. I mean, you think of the saddest of sad stories, Tank Abbott, his situation was just bad. I mean... Some of it was self-induced. Some of the heavy drinking, which made his liver have issues, and so on and so forth. But Mark Coleman, another example of a great champion who won tons of money in Japan, and as the Grand Prix champion, they from the reports and the things I've read in the past, that they took care of their guys. He was in that commercial where he was riding that banana. You probably have seen that one. So he got paid well in his career, but then his career ended at 44. I forget how old he was when he fought Randy. And then there wasn't that nest egg. There wasn't that thing to latch onto that you think of all the other baseball players and football players and basketball players that will sometimes will have at least, like the NFLPA would have something that they can talk about, a package in the future. They can do those.
And that
kinds
just
of things.
happened recently. Like, they had to go hard in the CBA so that the old players got paid. And look, the NFL's been around for forever, so it's like hopefully
Oh yeah.
MMA can learn from that. But geez, if they have to go through those growing pains, man, what these fighters are gonna go through. I mean, but let's move on to the next question from Ask a Fan.
Okay.
What he asked, what is,
Okay.
or maybe it's a she, could be a she. What is the thinking behind
Okay.
the UFC making Caitlin Chukagian versus Jennifer
Oh.
Maia? That's fascinating. I saw that announcement earlier today. Jay, what are your thoughts about that?
I was expecting the way they were trying to set this up. Chukagian, her last win. She's on a one fight win streak, so okay, hold on tight. Against Joanne Calderwood, it was a respectable win.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. The loss before was a split decision to Jessica Ai, who fought for the belt. So okay, not crazy. She released that video. That was actually pretty. It was actually kind of amusing, where she did her little counter dance
Oh
to dance
God,
along with
yeah.
Shevchenko to do like it's a dance off,
She
bro,
got like the
that kind of
dog
thing.
or something
Um,
involved. Oh my God.
yeah, you saw that. It's that level of okay, all right, I understand where you're coming. I know you're coming from. Okay, I'll allow it. That kind of marketing is what I thought the UFC
Yeah.
was into. They were going to say, okay, this is total cheeseball, but look at the champion and look at the challenger, her future potential
Mm-hmm.
challenger, having a dance off. Okay, we can sell that. We can market that. Check out, like you can picture like the UFC embedded before their showdown. Check out Thursday night where they two hit the champion and the challenger hit the dance floor. You can see that kind of thing when you're desperate to try and
Yeah.
sell a fight that doesn't look great on paper, or it's hard to push. Like I joked about this a couple days ago, like Chris Carriasso has one punch knockout power. When you're trying to sell a fight that you can't really sell, just veer into it, because what else are you going to do? And the UFC right now looks like they're in that kind of weird situation where Shevchenko completely shut down Carmouche. I mean, we
Yeah.
expected it. She was a minus 1100 favorite, 11 to
Only
1 favorite.
1100.
We expected she was going to win. Okay, no big deal. She was 1100 against I too. That's kind of interesting. She was the same favorite against both women. Anyway, her best challenger takes a fight against Jennifer Maia, who just beat Roxanne Modafferi, but she missed weight. So there's a big question mark there. So the number, let's see what the rankings tell us right now. Let's see. Jennifer Maia is number 4 and Chukagian's number 2. But for number 1 you have I, so that's not happening. Carmouche, that's sure not happening. Calderwood lost her last fight. But Calderwood is fighting number 6 Andrea Lee, who's on a 3-fight UFC win streak so far and looking good. So I could see if Lee wins, and because Lee and Calderwood are fighting next month in September, maybe they could try and put that together. But the only other fight that looks like it's on the table, and it's one I don't want, is Shevchenko Nunez 3. I don't want that fight. Not yet. Do you want that fight? Do you think that's what they can do with flyweight? What do you think they can do with flyweight?
I mean, before I mentioned the Shevchenko Nunez 3, the surprising thing about this Caitlin Chukagian is because I talked to her, I interviewed her maybe 3 weeks ago, and she was supposed to get the fight against Shevchenko.
That's right.
She's getting married, so she couldn't do the date they did.
She's getting married.
So but she told me, and it's in the interview. If you guys go look it up, she said that they said they would. Now, of course, in the UFC, nothing's a promise, but they did say she would get the shot next, which is kind of messed up. That she only said no because a life event happened that was planned before this. She couldn't just drop her wedding, and some people might. I respect her for not doing it, but the fact that they tell her, "Oh yeah, we'll get you. You'll get the fight instead," and then in the end, it must have happened quick because you just mentioned there was that whole dance-up video, which is relatively new, and then boom, Jennifer Maia versus Chukagian. So I wonder.
Yeah, that was just hey.
Like I wonder if she was under the belief she was going to get that fight, and they just recently in the last few days said, nope, we're not going to do it. Like they're almost being petty in a way, and then like, no, you didn't want to take the fight. We gave it to you, so no, you're not going to do it now. Even though she probably might have been even worthy of a title shot before this recent stuff. Like I forgot before it was like the loss she had. I forgot who she lost to.
Who, Chukagian to
Yeah, I think
Jessica
before
Ai?
that she was looking like a possible contender, and they lost to Jessica Ai. So
Yeah, right.
She's had chances before, and it's they passed on her. So it's pretty messed up. I mean, do I want to see Shevchenko Nunez 3? Not really. Is that the best fight available? Possibly, but if I do, there's a chance, that I may get to talk to Jessica Andrade soon. I want to ask her because Jessica Andrade has brought up possibly fighting Shevchenko. Shevchenko, when told the idea, has kind of been, all right, that'd be interesting. She didn't even say to her, oh no, she needs to win some more title fights. She just said if she wins this next fight against Weili Zhang, she might do it. So maybe Andrade Shevchenko is the fight that may happen instead. That doesn't blow your hair back?
No, not yet. It doesn't yet. It doesn't yet. Yeah. Let me tell you that I would when Andrade was doing okay at bantamweight. You remember she started her career in the UFC. Her career at bantamweight did okay here and there. I think she got beat by Nunez. Yes, she got beaten by Nunez and then dropped down because of the way the weight classes work. There was no 125-pound division. She had to drop 20 pounds to get there. And I thought, boy, that's an awful lot. That's a pretty big deal. Maybe she'd be better off at flyweight, go to Invicta, win that whatever. But she did that. So I'd always thought that she would, that could be her weight class because she's huge and so ridiculously strong at 115. But I can't endorse a champion going to try and become a 2-division champion when there are contenders that are right here. Yeah. They're ready. They're ready to go. Tatiana Suarez is right there. She's ready to go. And let me tell you, that's a fight. She's got to get through Weili Zhang. And that's, she's a tough. You saw what she did to Jessica Aguilar. Holy smokes. That was not fair. And then, I guess that's probably the most immediate challenger of Suarez. But, that'll hold you over that'll hold you over until March. If say she wins at the end of the month, Andrade wins at the end of the month. So in China, if that fight still happens, there's a lot of political unrest going on down in the Hong Kong, Shenzhen region. So let's hold tight on that one. I feel like you want to keep the division moving. I don't know. Okay. At least it's not the intergender fight.
Oh God! Segways, Transition City expert co-hosting again, Jay. And you're out. So you got the Cejudo question. Boom! Hit it with us. Hit us with it.
So my buddy Yojimbo, shout out to Yojimbo. What's up, butter? He asked this question. How much more cringe can a Cejudo cringe until he's cringed too much? Now, the word cringe a lot, we're over that word. But really though, how much is too much from Henry Cejudo? Is this nonsense too much? We don't need to talk about it long because it's nonsense. Unless you want to talk about it, good luck with that. But is this just nonsense? Is this just total cringe? What do you feel about this whole recent Henry Cejudo call out of Valentina Shevchenko?
It's high level cringe, but I have a follow-up answer question back to you, and that is Henry Cejudo the corniest champion we've ever seen in this sport? And he may arguably be the best athlete, possibly fighter. He could go down as one of those elites, but is he the corniest champion you've ever seen in your life?
I'm going through old champions to see if they were kind of cheese balls, but with the presence now, with the way that social media and information spreads now, he can reach a lot more people. So because, you picture a 2000 era, early 2000 era champion saying some dumb thing, 40,000 people will see it. Where now Henry Cejudo is hitting up, WWF wrestler women and hitting and getting on all these shows and doing all these things. He's probably he's probably going to be on Chop next season. That kind of stuff. I feel like just the magnitude of his reach puts him there. I think so. I think just because you're like, Henry, stop. You don't have to do this. I was talking to somebody earlier this week. There is nothing that can actually come from what they're talking about now. No commission would sanction their fight. Everybody would go. I would not be pleased about that. I've seen intergender MMA fights before. I've seen Idion Gomes smoke a guy. I've seen it happen. Drain Durandamy knocked out somebody in a boxing match. It happens, but it can't happen here, right? Can it happen here?
And the thing that the UFC needs to do, that's why I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. I would like to see them kind of shut it down. Is that, and me and Ant had talked about it a little bit, I think, on the show. There's a bit of a domestic abuse problem in MMA. I mean, it's all over, but there's several fighters that have issues with beating women. And the UFC needs to get as far away from that. And Henry Cejudo needs to be wise enough to go as far away from that. You don't want to be known as the guy like, I'm interested in beating women in a sport that has an issue with it. So they need to cut that down real quick. I have no interest in it. I would like to mention your designated member mentioned Yojimbo doesn't realize the transparent awesomeness of Henry Cejudo. Frank McEgger threw out a good one. He says that in terms of cornball champions, he wanted to throw out Tim Sylvia.
You know, he was kind of one of the ones I was thinking because of he went on the date and he wear the belt everywhere. You've probably seen the photos of him going out for pizza in that belt and going to, sleeping with the belt and trying to pick up dates in that belt. Yeah, he's up there, but just the platform I think is where Cejudo can break that just because in terms of raw numbers, like it's kind of a pet peeve I always have when they talk the hyperbole of the UFC, the biggest fight in the history of blah, 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 blah. Okay. There actually, statistically speaking, maybe some truth to that, to some of these mega ultra fights, because there were more people than there were a long time ago, just from a simple perspective, a lot more people. The accessibility of information is vastly superior to even what it was 15 years ago, even what it was in 2000. Things are crazily different. I mean, think of the days we had to actually I don't know if you engaged in this, trading back and forth VHS tapes of Pride shows and of old UFC and, trying to get your hands on UFC 22, oh my God, that's really hard. So this platform that he can just be a total goof, I guess this is a goof could be it. But man, you're exactly right. You don't imagine like a CNN headline of UFC fighter champion wants to beat up women's champion. Oh my God, that's exactly what's happening in terms of the challenge, but the optics of that. I mean, Ben Duffy has a great piece about optics. Optics are so bad. I don't know. I mean, there aren't too many worse things you can think about that. I think. That kind of domestic abuse situations, and then Cedric Marks, who is an MMA fighter who allegedly killed his girlfriend and her boyfriend, I think at the time, and they're seeking the death penalty. So heinous crimes. What other else things? Really, I guess prolific, really, really bad drug testing. I don't know what else. Like fight fixing. Fight fixing is another kind of kind of thing.
Jay, I hate to interrupt you, but it seems we have a second Judas in the chat. Anthony Walker is in the chat.
Whoa.
Anthony Walker from the Walkout Network.
I am terrified. Who is that? Ant Walker? I've heard that. I haven't heard that name.
It's like a distant memory. He claims the show isn't sexy enough. Where's Ant Walker? Ant Walker, you're not here. You're off the show. Jay Pettry, new co-host, doing a phenomenal job. You, sir, out. Pettry in. And of course he put trash. He's trash. He knows about trash. That's right, you said that. I hope you're yelling at the computer, and I can't even hear you right now. But Jay,
is that it? Is that it takes trash to no trash? Is that how it works?
Look at my co-host. Got jokes for days, Walker. Jokes for days. But Jay, are the crazy minions in the forum? Are they giving us any questions? Do we have anything from the forum at the moment?
The only thing that's coming up so far in the forum that of note is a relatively new story that came out a couple hours ago that Francis Ngannou, Francis Ngannou, UFC heavyweight number one contender in waiting, hopefully actually challenger sometime in the hopefully near-ish future, is going to be joining the Fast and the Furious 9. He's cast in that movie. Now he joins other former UFC fighters that have been in the franchise. Ronda Rousey was in, I think, the 6th, and Gina Carano in the 7th. Maybe switch them out. I don't remember.
Carano came first.
Okay, yeah. I can't remember the numbers exactly. I should, but that another UFC talent is going. What do they call it? the Tinseltown. Totally, nobody calls it that. But yeah, Francis Ngannou is going to be in Hollywood. What do you think about that? You think he can play? Think he can be something that, this is his
Yeah,
next
I mean,
career?
he's a perfect kind of. He's gonna play like a tough villain type. Like I saw him and Kamar Usman
Oh yeah.
mentioned they both would love to be in Black Panther too. It makes a lot of sense the whole Africa connection. But yeah, if he's supposed to be huge, scary enforcer, a la like what Dave Bautista from wrestling is doing a little bit and stuff. Yeah, he'd be absolutely perfect. The less talking and the more staring. Who wouldn't be impressed by a guy like that? But you know what? This guy, Ant Walker's causing an upheaval in the chat. He's talking about open workouts are over. And then Frank McEdgar, you dare. He says he's on standby. No, McEdgar. No, Walker. You're both not in. You're out. You are out. Out. But...
You ain't in, you out. You're not. If you're not first, you're last.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. Oh, well, you know what? Let me just add a couple of more interesting things from the chat. We got designated member mentioned about the union stuff. Sam Alvey said he's against unions because they'd force everyone to be paid the same, and he's just a few fights away from McGregor money. No joke. He thinks Kobe makes the same as some NBA newbie. Well said. Who else we got here? We got Jay White Cricket. That's the first time I've seen that. If you had live scoring, I dare say after a close round you could get corners arguing with the judges and causing crap outside the cage when the focus should be on what's going on inside. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, man. Could you imagine like a Dylan Dennis going, "Hey, blah blah blah"? I don't know. He yells about something. He likes yelling about stuff. Oh man, I didn't even think about that. That's oof. I wouldn't like that. But hopefully the judges are sequestered in a way that I don't know. The backup referee would be like Dan Mergliotta would be like.
Okay. Now you've actually mentioned fight fixing, and it's something brought up by Aero Zeppelin.
Yeah,
he mentioned he asks, how prevalent do you think fight fixing is in MMA?
I've long contested that it can't exist just on a fundamental level, because once that happens, the house of cards comes tumbling down. Yeah. If one's fixed, if you can look at that and say this is a fixed fight, you can think, well, what about the one that came before it? What about the one that came after it? So it's a horrible slippery slope. But at the same time, we have examples where it has happened. It has happened on the very large level. Let's see, Pride Takada and Mark Coleman. That was a fixed. That Coleman alleged later that was a fixed fight. I believe that's the one it was.
Just won too,
light me up in the comments.
I've heard Rampage. Yeah,
that's what they talk about. Yeah. They talk about that. Rampage is kind of way too open about that. Tai Yun Bang, was it Leo Kuntz? I don't remember, but it was a fight that Tai Yun Bang was either dealing with criminal problems, or I don't know what the problem was. Was it the crime organization was telling him, that came to him and said, you have to lose this fight. You have to lose this fight. We're going to put all of our money on your opponent. You have to lose this fight. And I think he won by split decision. And I'm going to look it up right now just to make sure I'm not crazy. But the point is that he got punished, he got penalized, he got let go because of it. Here we go. Tai Yun Bang was sentenced to 10 months in prison with brokers that set up the plot for them to accept bribes for him to throw the fight against Leo Kuntz. I was right. Okay. And what it was is that the money was going to be bet on Kuntz. Apparently, there was a large jump in the line going up into the event because suddenly an organization just plop and dumps money. Goes, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And I do, and what happens? He bailed on that. Bang said no. He I don't know if he took the money or whatever happened, but he said, screw that. I'm out. I'm not doing it. And won the fight. And he beat him, and he beat him by split decision. And I'm pretty sure that the mafia was going after him, and then they caught them. I think that was how it happened, that they were gunning for. So it exists, and we don't want to admit it exists, but I can't imagine it being prevalent, or this is over. This is a waste of time. We're 3 steps away from scripted WWE events, just in terms of outcomes, predictability, and whatnot. I have a buddy who, he could look at a WWE card and go, okay, I know, okay, this guy, this is how the night's going to end. If you did that for the UFC, throw it away. throw it away. That is one example where you would have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I don't want to do that. As an attorney, as a statistician, as a guy who's followed all these things for a long time, I know it exists conceptually, specifically that it does exist, but it can't exist on the major stage, or it's all garbage. And I just can't quite take that step to say it's totally all garbage yet. Well, so long story short, no, not quite. How about you, man?
Well, we got some interesting points from inside the chat. The obvious narrative from the chat is that the fights look weird, so it's hard to do them. Anthony brought up it's too many variables in MMA to make a fix look believable, and he referenced Rafael Torre and King of the Cage look terrible. Designated member brought up Mark Coleman and Takada, and he says Shamrock, Hume, all fixed fights that clearly looked off. So I mean, I don't feel it's prevalent. I think like what you brought up a lot from the Pride days, that the golden era of MMA, so to speak, I think that might have been the biggest of it. But yeah, I guess you can never know, because I was gonna say maybe the sport's too big for that, but then again, if the sport's too big, that means there's a lot of money to be made. So if it can happen in the big major sports, it can happen in MMA. Does it happen a lot? I don't think so, or at least I hope to believe it doesn't. It would be awful. Everything you mentioned would just be terrible. It would just destroy the sport, and that's always the fear about the other sports if you got betting on games. So I'm going to think it doesn't happen often, but on the regional level, in other countries, in Asia...
Oh, boy. That's a good point. That's a good point.
On the big level, Bellator...
You think one championship? Think there could be something funky going on there?
In Asia, where there's no sanctioning bodies, the government is less invasive, and state governments are less invasive. Totally. I mean, the pro of being one championship and running an organization, they can run it how they want without too much hands getting in the bread, so to speak. So yeah, I hope it's not a problem, but you just never know.
Did you ever read Freakonomics back in the day when it came out? There was a big study they did about fight fixing in terms of the sumo world, sumo wrestling. And what they basically discovered is that when you're, to not go too far into it, because I don't want to get things wrong, because I'm not a sumoka or whatever the word is for a sumo aficionado. Once you win, you go head to head with a certain opponent multiple times, X amount of times. And you go back and forth, and the winner of the sets advances and goes to the next stage. Well, once you get that threshold of you are the winner, the rest of the fights, or you're going to get that, the rest of the fights you can lose. And in doing so will help boost the stock of the loser. In other words, when you're winning, you're advancing up these different ranks and these tiers and thresholds to move on to the next level for better challenges, better money, stuff like that. And so they being organizations or whomever, can pay this fighter who's going to clearly win X amount of dollars to say, okay, win the set, but let the other guy win to close up to get enough wins to advance too, because he'll make more money, and as our guy will make more money too. I know it's kind of a weird concept, but basically by letting the opponents win to a certain degree, everybody can make more money. And that was prevalent, and it was massive, and there was a big study about that, and kind of a scandal for a while. There was whistleblowing and all that. So it exists, and it happens, but then you look at other fights. You look at other big fights, and you go, "There's no way they could be fixed by how it's going to play out." Like some of the fights coming up. Like you got a crazy fight coming out. We have for UFC 241. We have a fantastic card. We're going to talk about plenty. You think of some of the big fights in the card. Like you look at like a Paulo Costa, who's undefeated, crazy wrecking machine, and Romero going head to head. You look at that fight and watch them clash together like a bunch of bulls. You think that there's no way that could be fixed, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would hope not.
I know, I'm throwing a lot at you, brother.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Almost in just because the fact that you mentioned it, it almost seems too obvious, But
right,
I don't want to.
I mean, it's hard to fake a slower hook or something. It's hard to fake a takedown. It's hard to fake a Romero. I'm going to pick you up and put you over there kind of thing. It's hard to.
Well, I mean, moving on from that, Frank McGregor, who's very busy in the chats as well. His next question is,
Hey, Frank.
what kind of chances do you give guys? Do you give Romero and Costa actually going down? Now, we're not at least talking fixing. We're just going to talk about, is it going to happen with those two?
Is the fight
Yeah,
the
because
fight's
what
going
kind
to
of
happen?
chances do you guys give to Romero versus Costa actually going down? So I'm guessing he's saying actually happening.
Yeah, right, happening. I mean, I know this fight has been plagued by a lot of things that have gone on. It's kind of like the Edgar Holloway in terms of how many times it's been rescheduled. And, oh, it was supposed to happen. Oh, we couldn't do it. Oh, we couldn't go to Florida. There was a whole bunch of drama. I mean, it's Wednesday night, and I'm sure Mr. Walker in the section can let us know. Please, Ant, let us know how they looked for Romero
Yeah,
and
let's hear
Costa.
it.
That we're Wednesday night. If they're good to go and we're here, I'm going to go with 99.5%, with the only 0.5% being if Romero blows weight,
Yeah.
because he is want to do that. And Costa goes, but that, I don't know. I got to think it's going to happen, right? What do you think? It has to happen, right? Now
I think it has to.
we're
I
here.
mean, yeah, it's too close. Honestly, it's the only reason I think there's any percentage chance, because the thing I was going to say is that it's going to happen even if they miss one of them miss weight, or honestly both of them miss weight. One of them have to miss weight by like 20 pounds, but they could very well both miss weight, and then they'd be like, they'd be like, whatever, we're going to fight. The only reason I think they might go, maybe not, is just because it is a fairly stacked card. It has a good main event. You got Nate Diaz and Pettis, so this will be one night where they go, oh, you know what? Here's a chance to punish and look like, we're tough about them. Let's punish them. The card is still fine either way. But I think, honestly, even if they both miss weight, Frank, they're going to fight. That fight is happening.
Yeah.
Both of them have been out too long. Both of them are too damn marketable. The UFC wants them in the cage, getting that working. But Frank also asks a second question to follow up. Frank, just busy. I mean, in the questions in the chat, Frank McGregor, you're still not the co-host. Ant Walker, still out. What is Nate Diaz's motivation for coming back? What do you guys think kept him out so long?
Well, it's funny because of all the fights that Frank McGregor could have asked, what are the chances that you think this fight's actually going to happen? I feel like it would have been on Diaz and Pettis, because Diaz, Diaz has been a little flaky, I guess is the best word. The whole Poirier fight and the whole mess, all the drama beforehand, and Pettis, Pettis is notorious for tearing his everything all the time. I mean, his nickname for a while, the legitimate nickname I remember reading, was Shelf Time. This is a champion that was out for like 500 days before defending his title against Gilbert Melendez, something like that. So, of all the fights, I figured that would have been the one you go, maybe I don't know if they're going to make it. But his motivation for coming back, look, we've seen the Diaz interviews this week. We've seen him say, "Oh, they didn't offer me nobody. They were going to offer me nothing, and they did everybody. I didn't even look at who they were going to laugh at. They didn't give me anybody, but they gave me these other guys, and I said no. But I didn't turn anybody down." Like, I remember this just smoke was coming out my ears as he would finish his sentence, contradicting what he said at the beginning of the sentence.
He kind of goes in
by
a
saying,
circle.
"I never
like
turned down a fight."
Answers the thought, and then reneges on the thought. He's a fascinating guy.
Like I never was offered anybody, but the guys, and so I didn't turn anybody down, but the guys I offered, I turned them down because I didn't know who they were. Wait, what? Time out. They can't. So at this point, it'll be like a little bit less than a week? A little bit less than a week from 3 years out of the sport. Now he made a boatload of money with McGregor too. He made a comical amount of money, more money than probably most fighters have made in their entire UFC careers. Like 20 million was what I remember reading.
What did Conor get?
After the pay-per 30 or so.
That's for the second fight.
That's after the pay-per-view. Yes,
good for you, Nate.
Yes. Because they wanted guaranteed money, and so I think they got each of them got a couple mil each guaranteed money, like 2 and 5. I don't remember the numbers exactly for that one. But the pay-per-view money, 2 and change, 2.4 million pay-per-view buys or whatever the specific numbers are now, a percentage of that. Yeah, they took home a stupid amount of money. So 3 years passes. I don't know what Nate Diaz does on the side. I don't follow many fighters on social media to follow their hobbies and whatnot. But but I don't know what he does on the side besides train for marathons. So I don't know if he's spending his money. I know at one time, just it was a one-off, he started an MMA promotion called War, and he had a bunch of guys on it, and then that was it, the end. So that's the end of that story.
It was the end of the war.
So I mean, other than money, that has to be the only motivating factor, because like Diaz take everything he says with a grain of salt. Said he was offered guys this and that, and Covington and Usman and all the Wonder Boy and blah blah blah. Whether he was or not, I mean, this is a winnable matchup for him at 170 pounds against a former champion and a former 155er. So he's got the name, he's got the money, he's got the no advantage. He's got things that work out for him that could make him so he could win this fight. But what else could it be than money? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. And let me just add, because Anthony Walker, he clearly must miss the show, so he's staying in the chat very long time.
Yeah,
he mentioned Romero Costa is the new Romero Jacare, and that he mentioned on that they both, answering your question, they both didn't work out. It was just Cole and main event that did the workouts today.
Oh, but, okay. Well, maybe 99%. They said 99.5%.
But going back to the thing, and yeah, I think I think it's money, and I think it's also competition. I think on a level, he always liked competition. That's why he does the triathlons with his brother. He's a very competitive guy. That's why he does the jiu-jitsu all the time. You know, he stays in the gym all the time. He's a competitive guy. But I think with his stature rising, his wallet getting way fatter, you know, so he has reached a point, also maybe maturity. He's gotten to a point where he's saying, you know what, I'm only going to do it for these kind of conditions. I like to do it. I don't need it, but I'd like to do it under these conditions. And then that's what it is. I think they finally just met the condition he wanted. They were close with who was he going to fight? And then he backed. Yeah, he was close to Poirier, and then they pissed him off. And then he you know, he got annoyed. He said, "Okay, I'm done with that." You know, he's very diva-like, and which is fascinating about him. But I think they just met the things he needed. They gave him the money he wanted. They gave him the kind of matchup he wanted. Probably the venue. He didn't have to go too far to California. They met all the requirements he wants at this point in his career to be, you know, go out there. And I think also, unlike maybe a lot of fighters, he knows his value. This dude is not stupid. He knows that I'm worth a lot of money to you guys. So if I'm going to go in there and get bloodied up because I'm going to put on a show, I'm going to give you everything you want, you better meet my standards of what I want. And then that's how he's going to do it. And I think it's as simple as that. The money, but they met the standards. And the dude just wants to fight. He likes to fight. Now,
I dig it. It makes sense. It does. It makes sense that he finally got what he wanted, and it took him 3 years to get there. Sitting out what he's now. Well, how old is he now? 34.
He's gotta be. Yeah. He seems ageless.
30, he sat out. He's yeah. That's true. But my point more in that is that he sat out 3 years of his athletic.
I got a better
prime.
question. Is he a guy you think that will be affected by ring rust?
Fundamentally, yes, I do. I think because ring rust, you always hear ring rust is psychological. Yeah, I'm sure to a degree it is, but there's also the feeling of having a live opponent that wants to take your head off and be prepared for that. I don't know the Scrap Pack to be an AKA style training group, meaning that they hard spar, that they beat the bejesus out of each other every other Tuesday. That's hard sparring. So in terms of having that level of opponent, that oh my God, this is going to happen, I think that it will affect him. I think once he gets his sea legs about him, so to speak, Cain Velasquez, AKA, once he gets his sea legs about him, I think he probably will be okay. But I could see him struggling in there to begin with, going, oh crap, now I'm against a guy that wants to kick me. Oh man, now I'm going to deal with this. So I think so. I think ring rust will affect you. Do you think it's going to get him, or you think he's going to go in there like nothing happened?
I don't think it's going to affect him at all. I believe
really.
And you know what's fascinating when talking to different fighters and bringing that up, a lot of them do just say, like you said, it's a psychological thing and they don't really see anything in it. But I think there is a lot of a technical level. It's good to get in there in the cage in a hard fight, in the hard sparring, everything you said. But he just seems like a guy that really just marches to the beat of a totally different fighting drum
You're not
Like, that
kidding.
guy is going to be that
Yeah.
75-year-old grandpa or great-granddad that will still beat somebody's ass. Like, he's just going to be that guy. Like, he's still going to be able to take a punch. He's still probably going to be able to, on the street, throw 30 punches in, like, 30 seconds. Even at 72, he's just one of those guys. So, and he
And a
has a
slap.
style that isn't... It isn't George St. Pierre's jab. It isn't, you know, like a certain kind of takedown that needs good timing. And he's just a guy that goes out there and wings it. It's just all natural.
It's a 1-2. It's a 1-2 followed by
with a lot of pace, a chin and a half, and he's just gonna, you know, he throws he's like his brother. They go top to bottom, they mix it up, but it's just a natural thing, and that's what I'm saying. Like, he'll be a 7-year-old man and still very good. But I have to mention, we have maybe gotten the greatest compliment on show history. Harvey Weinstein, which is probably the wrong person to get a compliment from, but Harvey Weinstein in the chat says, you guys should take the seats over at MMA fighting. Their new talents are a joke. Jay.
I heard him say that last week. So it isn't quite I read him say. I didn't hear him. I did read that last week, and it is a compliment though, because like MMA fighting, like many organizations that lose a lot of talent, could use an influx of talent. It isn't to say what they're doing now in MMA fighting is a fine outlet. They're doing the best with this difficult situation. I mean, when you lose your management, your managerial team, your production team, you lose everything. You have to kind of build it up. So I respect what they're doing. I saw the new show that just released this week. MMA Fighting has their new show. You know, I can dig it. You know, execution and something is what you get used to. But I can dig that. I can dig an actual devoted to MMA news show. So who knows? Maybe Sherdog can look at that and go, we have an idea too.
It and we'd make it better because, Harvey, you're right. And you know what the reason is? It's Jay's here. Even if you said it last week, I'm going to act like you didn't say it. I'm going to believe you said it this week. It's Jay and Jay. It's not Anthony Walker. I miss you, Anthony, but you're out. You're still out. That said, Tomas...
Status quo will return. Don't worry, man.
That said, Tomas says, is Daniel Cormier to Stipe Miocic what John Jones is to Daniel Cormier? That is a terrible stylistic matchup that'll be very tough to beat regardless of the circumstances. Jay, man in the chair, man with the knowledge. What do you think?
Well, oh man, all this knowledge. Well, first of all, definite shout out to Tomas because he has been wanting us to address this question for quite some time. And it's a good question. It is a legitimately good question because it's the kind of thing I want to address more a little bit in Who You Got, we'll do in a little while. But what can Stipe have done in this span of time to not fall into the same traps that he fell in before? Because largely, Stipe initiated the clinch in their first fight. He led the dance. He tried to do this, that, and the other thing, and it worked against him. Cormier got him in the clinch and hit that nasty uppercut elbow kind of thing that put him out. Now, Stipe hasn't fought since then. Hasn't fought anybody. He's a family man. He's go home and be a family man. That's exactly what he did, Street Fighter 2 style. So what he learned along the way is he has to change his style. He has to change his game plan and has to remember that Cormier hits like a truck. Like it's surprised so many fighters in the past that they go, I had no idea he would hit me that hard. From Bigfoot Silva to Roy Nelson, Roy Nelson survived. He made it the distance, but Cormier knocked him around the cage for a while. He busted him up. It was one of those fights that you can almost see the chin growing little cracks in it, so to speak. It's a tough stylistic matchup. It's not to say that I won't pick Stipe to win this time because it's a heavyweight. You know, it's a heavyweight fight. You flip a coin. Good luck with that. But if Stipe comes out the same way he's come out and the same way he approaches a lot of fights, because you're not going to wrestle with Cormier, he's going to probably end up face down or face up with the lights, losing, Brendan Schaub losing his soul kind of thing. It's a tough thing. Do you think that Stipe can overcome it, or do you think that Cormier is going to have his number?
Tomas, very good question, but I am not ready to answer that yet. I feel like the jury is still out. Like, I have to see how this fight goes because I was watching the first fight in the last week. there were a lot of things I didn't like about that for Daniel Cormier. And there were things about what
Me
Stipe
too.
was doing. Stipe was getting to him. He was hitting him. He looked
Oh yeah.
so much
Oh
stronger,
yeah.
like in the grappling. And that's not to say if it got to a second, a third round, that things could change. I don't want to give away too much because, we're going to do the picks in a little bit. So I'll save most of that talk for then. But I think jury is still out. I can't say that yet. If he goes in there and dominates him and he beats him again, then we can make that assertion. Until then, I'm not going to give that yet. Because Stipe is still a legendary fighter, and it's such a weird thing. The natural, in-betweener fighter versus the natural heavyweight. I'm not going to go there yet, but which will make us go in to our poll question, which the poll question is, will Daniel
Okey-dokey.
Cormier take another fight after Stipe Miocic? Now, the questions we offered was, yes, he will, no matter what, or you could have chosen yes, but only if he wins, or you could have also chosen yes, he will come back, but only if he loses. And then the final option was no, Cormier is done after this fight. Jay, what were the poll results?
So first place with about 43% of the vote was that Cormier will take another fight no matter what. Okay, all right. That was the plurality vote. Then the next one is with about 27% is yes, but only if Cormier wins. Okay, so that's about 70% in total. That's 70% in total saying yes, no matter what, as long as he wins. And then in third place with about 17% of the vote is no, Cormier is done. So 75 or 17% say this is the last fight for Daniel Cormier. And finally, in last place with 13% is yes, but only if Cormier loses. So about 83% of the vote said that
Yeah.
Cormier is going to fight again. What do you think about that?
I'm in the group of people with the yes, but only if he wins. I think, yeah, there's a chance more likely enough. If I had to put betting odds, I'd probably say 60-40 he does return. But I mean, he is past that point that he said he was going to stop. He said he was going to stop at 40. He's already past that. The whole John Jones fight seems very up in the air. John Jones says it won't happen. I think he's trying to taunt Daniel into having that fight by saying that. Like, what's the test? Is he? It all matters in how he looks in the fight. If he barely survives Stipe and he does win, does he really want Ngannou? I don't know. That's a tough one. And that's really the only great test out there. That's the only interesting fight out there that's really left. So I think if he wins and he wins spectacularly, again, the Ngannou fight looks very delicious and very financially beneficial. If he loses, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
And if he wins, but it's a so-so win, I don't know. So, you know what? I'm going to go down. I'm going to say it's 50-50. I really think it's maybe 50-50 he comes back. It all matters on his performance. Good performance, see you in a couple months, Daniel. So-so or bad performance, end of the line. Because he's already passed what he wanted to continue fighting anyway. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm going to have to sort of disagree. I'm going to have to 50%. I'm going to have to 50% disagree then using the numbers. I'm about 50% disagree, and here's why. All roads lead to John Jones. There's no doubt in my mind that if I'm going to be bold and give my boldest prediction of all, Daniel Cormier versus John Jones 3, so actually be John Jones, Daniel Cormier 3, because of the way that the lineups happen, will take place in Madison Square Garden for the headliner in November. That is my stone cold prediction that's going to happen. It'll happen in 3 months, and no big deal. And we'll do that, and that'll be the final farewell. They may even call that Jones in New York, and then Cormier and his goodbye, settling the score. All of the stories. There's all the stories. Every one of them can be settled there. If he wins, then he defends his heavyweight title against the current light heavyweight champion and his bitter rival John Jones. John Jones can become the second light heavy to heavyweight champion, double champion, by beating his rival. Story. If Cormier loses, he loses his heavyweight belt. What can he do? Go back down to 205, a little less likely, I admit. Go back down to 205, fight John Jones for his old title. It's the story, the other storyline that can sell. It doesn't quite sell as well if he's coming off a loss, but he can say, well, it was the Stipe Miocic, one of the greatest heavyweights. Stipe Miocic, one of the top 5 heavyweights ever. You can make that argument now. So John Jones or bust. I can't see Cormier fighting Ngannou. Somebody mentioned earlier that Ngannou is what happens if Ngannou gets grounded out? and then he's 0-2 in title fights. That kills his
Yeah.
stock for a long time. So Ngannou could be the guy to come in after Cormier loses, or leaves, or vacates the belt or whatever. I can't see Cormier and Ngannou. I can see that theoretically, but it's as long as Jones keeps his stuff together, it's got to be. There's no major contender at light heavyweight that really makes you go, boy, I'd love to see John Jones fight Dominic Reyes. Not so fast, my friend. Johnny Walker, he's kind of busy. He's fighting in Copenhagen. He's fighting anyway. He's fighting soon. Yeah, I got to see. It's got to be Jones Cormier. It's just got.
Fair enough. Well, let's look at the chat a little bit. Harvey Weinstein is back. He says, "Well, Jay knows I'm for real at least. I can't even understand the one new host with his unbelievably thick accent. But trust me, guys, I know the entertainment and show business industry well. I mean, he claims it. I didn't know I was new. I thought I was here almost every week. I didn't know I had that thick accent. I guess I do. But you know what? I'll take your slight slap in the face compliment, Harvey. It's okay. But that said, Frank McGregor also wanted to mention to you, Jay, I'm liking the Wheaties box. No, nothing for that. He likes your Wheaties.
Well, it's the right time. No, thumbs up. Truly, it's the right time for it. It's I picked that bad boy up. I don't know, probably when I bought it, it was probably already stale when it came. It was towards the tail end of the Pettis thing, because I'll never forget. And I went into this a little bit. I think I just went into this with some other people. I mean, do you remember when that happened? When the whole Pettis Wheaties box thing happened, and they did the unveiling, and they had a life-size Wheaties box and had Pettis face off with it. That whoa, what is happening? My world is shaking.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's a huge thing to have an MMA fighter in a Wheaties box. You know, you think of the legends, you think of the Jordan box. You know, that's one of the iconic Wheaties boxes. So to have Pettis on there was just a really cool thing. And, you know, I couldn't pass it up for $2. As long as I don't smash it up on every time I move, it's not that big of a deal. And I thought it was, you know, the right thing to have up, given, you know, who's fighting this weekend. So thank you, Frank McGregor. I appreciate you looking
Jimbo
out,
mentions, I think the only way DC fights again is if he wins and then coaxes John up to heavyweight, which you kind of mentioned, talked about a little bit. So before we get into the who you got in the final part of the show, is there anything from the forum worth mentioning?
Let's see. Do we have anything worth talking about in the forum right here? We have a bunch of chatter. You know how it goes. It's a bunch of stuff back and forth.
Cat fights.
Yeah. The only big story of note that I guess we can definitely talk about, actually, is that the UFC earlier today, about, I don't know, probably a little afternoon, well, they didn't announce it, but the release of Kat Zingano, who is a featherweight and a former bantamweight title challenger who fought Ronda Rousey and didn't go so well, has a win over a knockout win over current champion Amanda Nunes. Well, the UFC up and let her go. And the story about it, as Zingano kind of explained a little later, was that she had a quote project she was working on, and that's all she explained into it, and that working with her family, and she mentioned her child and other opportunities presented themselves. So it sounds to me, from that little bit of information that could mean nothing, is that she was offered a fight, said, I can't do it, I have a life event to take care of, like a Caitlin Chukagian from earlier, and said, sorry, I have this to deal with, this is the time. Luke Rockhold saying, I can't, I'm modeling. Okay, that kind of thing to say, I got my stuff to deal with. And the UFC said, okay, all right, peace. Now, this is a big moment to what we've talked about in the past and what you guys have talked about in the past. So, and when I've had to chime in the background and discuss with you guys about the future of the featherweight division for the UFC, because this is kind of the next, when the division was only officially or unofficially or all told 7 fighters, and you lose 2 in 2 weeks, you know, the bell's starting to toll here, Tiger. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you go, Dana said we're not going to get rid of the featherweight division, as the featherweight division will continue on without Chris Cyborg. UFC releases Chris Cyborg. And then, almost like an Always Sunny in Philadelphia cold opening, the UFC releases Kat Zingano just right afterwards because they're kind of going, whatever. Am I going too far? Am I looking too much into it? Am I thinking that this is not the death knell for featherweight? What do you think? Do you think this has any implications for them letting Kat Zingano go?
It's an interesting viewpoint at it. I mean, this is one of the few times we're gonna have to disagree in that. I think they still have the cyborg thing. I think we saw coming, so I think they planned for that. I think they have options. The featherweight division has always been questionable for a long time, but they got a Felicia Spencer. I bet Pam Sorensen's probably coming shortly. You have a Megan Anderson.
Probably.
You have Nunez still there. You have talent there. They had the Ultimate Fighter with a bunch of featherweights that probably come in, and some of them looking good. What's the one who won the featherweight tournament in the Ultimate Fighter?
Well, Macy Chasson, but she went down to bantamweight.
I mean, the division always is questionable anyway, so it disappeared. This is one time I'm not always a defender of the UFC's decision making, especially when it comes to fighters, especially with the cyborg. This is one thing where I'm not too mad at them in that when you look at her body of work, she is 1-4 in her last 5 fights.
Dating back for 5
without
years.
that, but that's still her last. So if she has an issue in that they don't feel she's reliable to get fights done, they could easily make the case. Look, we still have kept you. We've released other people who, perfect example, Christian Yalgos that I just talked to last week. The story's up on the site right now. He got released after being 1-2, and his last fight was a good fight, and he got signed and then released because of what things going on. She's still 1-4. Now, granted, they're good opponents, but she's still 1-4. They could easily have made a case. Look, we could let you go. We don't trust how we can't rely on you to get fights. We're offering you a fight where we probably could have let you go. You're 37 years old in a division that's probably not good when you're getting older, and we wanted to give you a fight, and you're not going to take the fight. Is it the nicest thing in the world? Probably not. But if we're talking about looking at the bigger picture, her age, her recent history, maybe she's not getting fights. I'm not shocked. If it wasn't Kat Zingano, if it was maybe like Marion Renault or whatever, I think people would have probably been less in a tiff about it. It's because she's popular, she's well liked, she's been through some tough things in life, so people feel for her. But 1-4 fighter at 37 getting released by the UFC, if you look at it at that level, is it that shocking?
No, I think my curiosity is the time frame. That's what really sticks out to me. Like her fight with Megan Anderson took place in December 2018, and she got poked in the eye by Megan Anderson's toe. A total freak accident with the toe in the eye, and I can't continue. That was a terrible situation for everybody involved, just about. So you feel for her on that level. But if they were going to let her go, why did they wait 8 months? And then you wonder, okay, maybe she did turn down a fight. They offered her and said, okay, maybe in July they came to her and she said no. Okay, but I don't recall any injuries or anything that she was going on. I thought everything was being handled, so I don't remember anything other than my eye really hurts. I'm going to go get looked at. I don't remember there being an additional injury or something that held her on the bench for so long. For that to happen, and then 8 months later, the week after Cyborg goes, just that's where the little red flag hit my head. Because sure, I dig it. I'm the numbers guy. I see 1-4 in your last 5 against great competition, but when you only won one fight in the last 5 years, that's going to hurt you. Not everybody is BJ Penn, so eventually they're going to come calling. But it just, the timing just felt so strange that I think that's what caught everybody off guard, or at least caught me off guard, because Cyborg and the drama happens, and the week later, oh yeah, we're letting one of the other 3 featherweights go. I don't know. I can see it making total business sense, absolutely, but maybe they should have worked on their optics a little more.
Fair point. Now, before we get into the fight picks for UFC 241, Jay, you are clearly a very popular co-host, because you're not a fill-in at this point. You're taking the job. You are Ant Walker now. Ant Walker has morphed into Jay Pettry, new co-host. We've already got Harvey Weinstein's a big fan. Now Judas has been swayed by Jay Pettry.
Respect.
Cole Shelton says, real question, with Jay now hosting Trenches, what does he not do with Sherdog? Just
Oh,
admire it.
good Lord, man.
Just straight up digital kisses
I
being
do
blown your
everything.
way, flowers being thrown at you.
I like the love. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. Because of my presence with the forum and the time we've spent together, my dear friends, Europe One, Frank McEdgar, Tomas, and all the rest of you. I know there's plenty of names that I could shout out to, but I won't because I'm not gonna. There's some level of hatred that you develop from the community just by being I have a different color name, and people don't like things that are different color than everybody else, so they look at that and they see me as an orange or blue or whatever, and they go, you're a threat, you're gonna, I don't know, you're gonna ban my account. And then, oh no, that's the end of my life. I'm dead. So I can understand their vitriol, and I appreciate it. So I was expecting that. So getting the love from
Yes.
Judas and Harvey, if I can get love from universally reviled characters as such, then I'm doing something.
Getting love
I'm doing
from
something.
Judas.
Whether
Getting
it's
love
right
from
or
Judas
wrong,
is like getting love from
doing
Doctor
something.
Doom. I mean, it's impressive. It's scary, but it's
Hey, I'll
impressive.
dig it.
But that said,
take
let's
it.
talk
I'll
Doom,
take it.
because the names Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa bring Doom
Oh,
to a
Doom.
lot of people's hearts. If they're getting a
Oh,
call
yeah.
from the UFC, would you like to fight those guys? So first
Good
pick
luck
for
with that.
UFC 241 of our Who You Got. Yoel Romero at 13-3 is a minus 150 favorite versus Paulo Costa 12-0, only a plus 130 underdog. Jay, who you got?
It's sometimes that I make picks and I look at them and I go, okay, you have the ridiculous aggressiveness of Paulo Costa, who, by the way, 12-0, 12 finishes, hasn't gone beyond 8 minutes in a fight. Against, he's fought legit competition. He hasn't fought in the Yoel Romero's of the world, but that's because they're like one of them, Yoel Romero. He's the guy. But you look at his body work, and Costa. I mean, he knocked out Johnny Hendricks, and he knocked out Uriah Hall in a surprisingly competitive fight, and then Oluwale Bang Bus Bamboshe, and then South Africa's Gareth McClellan. So okay, he's working his way up there, and then holy smokes, Yoel Romero's
Yes.
standing in front of me.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, with the boss, it's the boss. It's like you're playing through Mortal Kombat, and suddenly you have to fight Goro out of nowhere. That's not fair. Costa is a fascinating prospect. He is 28 years old. Looks like he's carved out of steel and hits like a tractor trailer. And then Yoel Romero is 42 now, right? He's 40. He's 42 and looks like he's carved out of granite, hits like a train, and is the only losses he's had in the last, I don't know, almost 10 years are Robert Whittaker and Robert Whittaker. And that one fight, you can go, well, I don't know about that. The Whittaker 2, kind of a questionable scorecard to some people. It's not quite unstoppable force meets immovable object. It's not quite that level, but holy smokes, this is a violence fight. I can see of the two outcomes happening, Costa hitting Romero with all he has, because Romero has historically been a relatively slower starter, only to pick things up and get third round stoppages. If Costa catches him cold, because Romero's been out for a year and a change. Romero's been out since the second Whittaker fight. He's been out since then. If he can catch Romero standing, he can get him. But if not, he's going to hit Romero with all he has, and Romero's going to look at him. He's going to smile with that big smile, and Costa's going to go, oh, crap. And he's going to go, what have I done? And that's when Romero takes you for a ride. So I can see Romero surviving the blitzes, surviving the barrage, getting Costa tired, and getting the stoppage. And let me tell you, this is a heavyweight fight in a middleweight packaging, straight up. What do you think?
The fascinating, and I think the point you bring up about slow starter meets fast starter, like that's a big point I didn't factor in, because more times than not, I mean, I only had a little bit of hesitation when making the picks, then emailing it back to you, was just Romero's age. 42, like, I know he's 42. A freak athlete, but you're still 42. Sooner or later, that has to affect somebody. Otherwise, on every other level, I just feel that what the Costa's body work so far isn't enough to make me think he can take out a guy like Yoel Romero. But the fact that his age, fast starter or slow start, it's going to be interesting. I'm picking Yoel. I think Yoel will be able to weather the storm and he'll get by it. And then once it gets in the second round, I think I can see a big momentum shift when Costa can't stop him or he weathers the storm or survives, maybe even getting knocked down, and he gets through it. He'll probably start wilting him. Like, you'll start feeling the wave coming on. But yeah, it's a fascinating fight. I'm maybe as this top three is phenomenal, and the fact that the main event may not be the most anticipated fight, despite it having one of the greatest of all time versus the greatest heavyweight of all time, that shows you how fascinating that these two fights are. I'm gonna go Yoel Romero. I'm gonna say decision. It'll probably be a 29-28 because I think he'll definitely at least lose one round for sure because he always does.
Yeah, that first round.
I'll go 29-28. Yoel Romero in a decision. Now moving on to this other exciting fight that is maybe the most anticipated just because of Nate Diaz. He's become that kind of character in the sport. You got Anthony Pettis, 22-8. He's a -140 favorite, probably because of that 3-year layoff that you mentioned earlier, versus Nate Diaz at 19-11. The most unassuming 19-11 you ever see, because that 19-11 is very deceiving, and he is only a +120 underdog. Jay, Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz, who you got?
Well, I see it playing out like the Josh Thompson Nate Diaz fight.
Yeah,
I see.
I like that.
And the reason I see that is because Pettis kicks everything, everywhere, indiscriminately. He'll kick your legs and then he'll throw a jumping head kick, and then he'll throw a knee to the body, and then he'll jump up. He will target everything, and that's the kind of thing that I feel could make Diaz go, "Oh boy, wait a second, hold on, this is different. What are we throwing spinning stuff now?" That was his big brother, but still the same mentality of "Oh boy, this is a lot going on." Now he was relatively not flustered, Diaz that is, by Conor McGregor and his kicking game and whatever, but Conor McGregor was able to use his kicks to set up his strikes. Conor busted up Nate Diaz in the first round of their first fight. He had him in a bad way. And then in the second fight, he had him in a bad way again, dropped him twice in the first round or something like that, and worked him. And part of that, I felt, was the ability to have the kicks and use them and then be able to set up his strikes with them. He could use his kicks to set up his punches. Usually the other way around. It's usually the open up a head kick or something like that. But I see Pettis in his kicking advantage and also working that lead leg at Diaz. Boy, that lead leg is going to be sausages at the end of this fight. I can see that the work happening. Now the counterpoint obviously is Diaz and his relentless cardio and pressure. This is a 3-round fight. But this is a 3-round fight. This isn't 5 rounds, so cardio for days doesn't quite have the same meaning as it would if they had to go 25. I have Pettis getting it done. I don't know if he'll get the stoppage, but he'll hurt Diaz. I feel like that he'll hurt Diaz and we'll be surprised. But Diaz is going to land on him too. This could easily be fight of the night. But I have Pettis getting it done at the end.
I think
you, brother.
You mentioning Josh Thompson and Nate Diaz is a fantastic point because I actually forgot about the fight, and I'm mad at myself. I forgot about it because it's still one of the most shocking things to see Nate Diaz get hurt in TKO because it hasn't happened before or since. Yeah,
and head kick.
The fight I was thinking of to add to that is the Donald Cerrone fight. While Nate did have his moments, someone who can use kicks expertly, like you were just kind of mentioning with Pettis, gives him trouble. Someone that can move around a little bit, use kicks, kind of fight a good solid range game, but be tough enough to deal with the wave like Donald Cerrone was. Because Nate Diaz had moments, but I'll never forget in that Donald Cerrone's fight, just cutting Nate's legs out, just him falling on the floor a bunch of times. And then the Josh Thompson fight was that very similar to Pettis, that he can move and still use kicks and even better. And I think Pettis comes from a Taekwondo background, so his ability to move and use those kicks very smoothly, seamlessly. I really think Nate chose this fight because, one, it's somebody that's going to stand. They're not going to take him down. And two, I'm sure he was probably 100%. Looking at, and you just mentioned it, Nate has a fantastic gas tank. We've seen Anthony Pettis. He can tire a bit. That's never been a forte for you. So he probably sees he's going to stand with me. He's going to get tired. I'm going to take him out. But I just think stylistically, this is probably not a good matchup for Nate Diaz. It's a kind of fighter that always gives him problems, just like you kind of mentioned, and that's why in our picks, I picked Andy Pettis. I think there will be Nate Diaz moments, and we'll be excited, but I think he gets a decision in an exciting fight. I'm hoping it doesn't become Anthony Pettis being smart and tactical. Nothing wrong with that. That's what you should do to preserve your health. But if he's tactical, he fights almost like a Condit versus Nick Diaz fight, I think people will be disappointed because they're expecting a barn burner. Can't blame him, but either way, it'll probably be fascinating just tactically to watch it. I'm picking Anthony Pettis in decision. Now, okay.
Have a quick follow-up. Quick follow-up to that. Quick follow-up. Over under on slaps landed. I'm going to say 2. Is Diaz going to land more or fewer than 2 slaps during this fight? Open-handed.
I'm going to say
pow.
Under. I think this guy will be moving around too much.
So?
I think Anthony moves around too much and can keep range. I think he'll attempt multiple slaps. He just won't land them.
And he'll whip on the slap?
He'll try.
Oh, boy.
But he'll
oh
miss.
Man, that'd be embarrassing.
Or he just won't do it because he's like, this guy's pissing me off. He's too far away and stuff like that. But now on to our main event. Daniel Cormier, 22-1, only a minus 140 favorite versus Stipe Miocic, record holder for most title defenses at heavyweight, one of the greats of all time, 18-3, a plus 120 underdog. Jay, main event, heavyweight title fight. Who you got?
Heads is Cormier, tails is Miocic. No, it's not quite. It's not quite that. It's not quite that level of a fight pick. Since I sent out the betting lines and the picks, Stipe has closed in a little bit, so Cormier is a little bit less of a favorite. He's now minus 135. Who was the favorite
the first time?
So
was it Stipe
small.
The first time?
Let me find out real quick. And I think that Stipe was the favorite. Yes, because he was the champion. He was whatever. Let's see. Stipe Miocic closed as a minus 160
even heavier
favorite.
than Cormier
so,
right now. Interesting.
Yep. You know, I mentioned this before with Tomas's question that we've been chomping at the bit to answer for a while. Cormier he's you know what he's gonna get, and that's a lot. There's a lot to him. He's a shockingly heavy-handed striker who can clinch with anybody, has surprising power, can pick up Josh Barnett over his head. And, Josh Barnett, by the way, is the only fighter in UFC history to ever participate in a UFC super heavyweight fight. When he fought Gan McGee, who weighed, I don't know, he was 6'10", and weighed 290-something pounds. So, he picked up former super heavyweight Josh Barnett up and over and dumped him. I don't think Stipe is going to fall for any of that wrestling stuff. He didn't in the first fight. Cormier didn't even try, and he didn't have to. A telling thing about that first fight was that Stipe did try and engage in the clinch, and he was largely successful. He backed up Cormier against the cage, and I think even Joe Rogan mentioned in the broadcast that Stipe had a strength advantage.
And those underhooks.
He did, for very surprising, because of the height difference. Because Cormier is 5'10-ish, 5'11", depending on what convenience store he walks out of, and Stipe is 6'4", and was able to get that going, and surprise. I think he surprised Cormier. I think he was genuinely shocked, and that blitz at the end that took him out. I don't know if Stipe is going to fall for that again, because he was too complacent in the clinch. Before that happened, he got uppercutted and tagged a few times. He got a mouse under his eye and got busted up a little bit. Stipe has, I mentioned this before, Stipe has not fought, so we cannot assess his game in a developmental level. We cannot look at his game and say, okay, since the loss to Cormier, we found in his next fight he did this, or this. Yeah. They didn't have that. Any of that. Any of that. So we don't know what training differences, and I haven't watched the embeddeds if they give it anything away. They don't usually do that, to see that Stipe has done something different. So other than assumptions, which is what I'm working on, we don't know if he would do anything differently. That all said, I still think this could be Stipe's fight to lose. His power is just surprising as well. It's less surprising than Cormier, because Cormier hits hard, and you look at him and you go, well, that guy shouldn't hit that hard, and he knocks the face off people. But Stipe, his technical boxing is very strong. If he keeps you at his long range and jabs you, holy smokes, he can He can work in. Usually, this is when you say he could work his grappling, but that's kind of a wash because he's fighting Daniel Cormier. But I think on a standing and striking level, I still think that Stipe Miocic is a more conditioned and more technical striker. So I still like the first fight, and I was incorrect, and I'm okay with that. I have Stipe Miocic getting the fight, getting it done, and it'll be violent and it'll be messy. And then Daniel Cormier would go and fight John Jones at light heavyweight. So that's my take, and I'm sticking to it. What about you, man? What do you think is going to happen in that 241 main event?
Am agreeing with you. I'm on the same line as I picked Stipe the first time, even though I'm a total Daniel Cormier mark,
Okay.
and I was, excited for
Oh,
that.
sure.
I'm picking Stipe again. Like I mentioned earlier, there are certain elements of that first fight while watching it back I didn't like. Like, he was able to touch Daniel. Now, there was an interesting moment in that first round where you can kind of see Daniel figured out a little bit, and you could see the speed advantage, and that's a huge thing. That speed advantage for a guy that can pop like Daniel can at heavyweight, it's a big deal. And it's not like Stipe has a very good chin, but he can be had a little bit. He can be caught, but he can survive. That's what makes him such a special and all-time heavyweight. That survivability, and then to grind through and come right back at you like he did with Dos Santos. I bring up Dos Santos because the Dos Santos fight in that rematch, after a very, very close first fight, in the rematch, he blitzkrieged Dos Santos. I really feel Stipe does not get enough credit for being an IQ fighter. He's a smart fighter. It's not maybe something you can see, because his fights never last that long, so it's not like you can see him go through A, B, C plan. But I think he was well prepared. You mentioned it in the grappling. He did. He looked clearly stronger. And then they mentioned in the fight, too, he was using the underhook, getting under Daniel. So Daniel was heavy on the hook, slow, lower. Like, he just couldn't do anything against the cage. He really didn't show anything wrestling-wise. That doesn't mean he couldn't do it in the fight, because you brought up the Josh Barnett thing. If he could do it to Josh Barnett, he could do it to anybody. But that said, Stipe is smart. He's going to be prepared. I can see him coming out fighting very careful. He watches. He's very defensive. He's keeping his guard up, and he should have faith. If all he needs is one or two shots to hurt Daniel Cormier, because Daniel Cormier, he's got a good chin, but he can be hurt a little. Yeah,
You've seen him hurt a lot. It can
happen to him. So Stipe has dropped legends. He's stopped legendary fighters, Fabricio, Dos Santos, great champions who are durable guys, and he's finished them. So he's probably going to be very careful, wait for that moment, and, a 1-2, or just try to get that one shot that pays off. And he can do it as far as the fight goes. So I'm going to go with Miocic. I agree with you. I think it'll be a violent end. I would be surprised if it went 5 rounds. I can see him getting Daniel in the third after maybe Daniel starts to slow a little bit because of the weight, because of grappling with a large man that isn't easy to take down. I think he'll get him in the third TKO. But if Daniel shocked the world again, or maybe this guy, he's not shocking the world, he's a favorite, I wouldn't be surprised either, but I'm going to pick him. That is all of our questions for this week. Woo! Of course, we have to always end it on knowing where they can find you. Where should they find you on the social? Where should they find some of your work? Where can they just get a taste of Jay Pettry and the brilliance that he's brought today anytime they want on the interwebs?
Well, that first part we're going to have to save for a separate conversation. But the social media presence, you can find me all on Twitter at Jay Pettry. As you can probably see it at the bottom of, should be right down here. You can find me on Twitter. I don't play Instagram or any of those guys. You can also find me on the main page, right at Sherdog.com. Under features, I'm right there in the drop down, along with Todd Martin, Eric Stinton, Ant Walker, our illustrious ex former co-host Anthony Walker, and our and our senior editor Ben Duffy. What you can find me doing is I'll be writing the pre and post fight betting odds analysis pieces. Prime picks I'll be filing that tomorrow, so it should be going up on Friday. I write the Fight Facts series, which is all the interesting information and cage curiosities, ring rarities, and whatnot of the fight cards. So I'll be writing one up about UFC 241. I'll also be running the play-by-play on the Sherdog UFC 241 coverage, so I'll be right there letting you know every vicious left hand that drops Daniel Cormier and swarms him for the finish and everything like that. I'm your Huckleberry. And I think that's all I have besides now being... Oh, that's right. There's one more thing. I'm also a regular panelist on our weekly show called Off the Chain, which we have Mr. Walker, who couldn't be with us today, our vengeful ex-co-host, Anthony Walker is the host of Off the Chain, which is it airs on Tuesdays. Joined with senior editor Ben Duffy and a special guest. We've had a former UFC fighter on the show before. We've had other journalists, and we're going to have a special guest this week to talk about some interesting financials from a certain company called One Championship.
Can we get a hint?
Save that for another time.
Can we get maybe some initials?
I'll just say he's done a lot of really excellent work lately, breaking stories about One Championship, including coverage about drug testing, coverage about financials and contracts. So we're excited to talk to him, and that'll be airing on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can find us and check in. And otherwise, that's all for me. What about you, man? You got a lot of things. You got a lot of irons in the fire. What do you got for us?
As you, as the designated member just said in the chat. You can find Jay all over Sherdog. Really, he's just everywhere.
Just plastered. Oh. It's ridiculous.
Now for me, as always, on Instagram and on Twitter, it's Cheap Seats Chat. You can find me there. Like Jay mentioned, there's a lot of stories on 241 I have up this week. Also, I had a story on Julius Anglicus. I think it's how you say it. He won at he won at the Dana White Contender Series, but he was the only guy that did not get a contract. But he has a great story, talks about fighting fear and combating it before every fight. Really honest, really cool dude. But also, right up now with 241 stories are interviews with Ian Heinisch, Casey Kenny, and Christos Yagos, all fighting on UFC 241. And also, hopefully after this, I'm going to continue working on it and trying to get some more people. It will be a video of fighter picks, which those three men, Anglicus, he'll be on it. You know, several for Demetrius Johnson, fight picks for DC and Miocic, hopefully coming in the next couple of days. And that's pretty much it. As always, and I'm going to stop the stream now, even though we're going to keep going, because it's like 30 seconds that you stop it, and it keeps going. So I'm just going to, I'm going to stop it now, and we're going to keep going. Either way, hold on, let's see here. I'm going to stop the stream from my